Welcome back to the Mike Method, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories, strategies, and soul of leadership and high performance. Today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to for a long time, literally a decade in the making. I'm joined by Adrienne Giffen, executive recruiter and digital entrepreneur, author and creator of a brand new conversation-sparking board game, Now You're Talking. Adrienne's journey is anything but ordinary. Almost 20 years ago, a profound spiritual moment on a walk through Gambier Island changed everything. That experience became the foundation of her upcoming book, UNRAVEL YOU, a deeply personal invitation for women to connect the dots in their lives, rediscover their spark, and ask themselves the powerful question, what makes you dance? But Adrienne didn't stop there. What began as a book evolved into a playful and powerful board game designed to help us do something we're all craving more of, talk. Now You're Talking is about closing the gaps between generations, putting down our screens, and having the kind of conversations that linger long after the game is done. It's a connection with intention, and it's magic. In this episode, we explore Adrienne's path through motherhood, adversity, spiritual growth, and entrepreneurship. We dig into the power of meaningful conversation, how high school years shape who we become, and why real connection is foundational for healthy families, thriving teams, and resilient communities. If you've ever thought about writing a book, making a bigger impact, or just long for deeper conversation in your life, this one's for you. Let the conversations begin. Now You're Talking. So I feel like this podcast is 10 years in the making because I think that's the last time we had lunch. Was actually downtown Vancouver. And so I really appreciate you making time to be on the podcast today.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. And wow, what a difference 10 years can make. So much has happened, and I'm sure lots has happened with you too.
What I was reflecting on is the fact that, the last 15 years in your business and in your career, you've been using the top grading framework, which is pretty much known in the HR space as being the go-to framework for really getting at the heart of who a leader truly is before you hire that leader into your organization. So I know that you and your partners are experts in this space. Did you ever have a thought that expertise would lead you to then go and create a board game?
Well, no, not a thought, not a thought. But what I do, and the book came first, But what I do really appreciate about top grading is the powerful part of the interview when we get to ask a candidate about their high school experience. Right. And it doesn't matter how old a candidate is, immediately they go right back to high school. And, high school is an amazing thing because most of us have it in common, yet our experiences are so completely different. You get put in, it's like a small city. You put all these hormonal teenagers together. It's amazing any of us survive it. Oh,
I think I had the same university experience actually. So when I graduated from high school and went to university, the first year was, pre-commerce. But when I actually got into commerce at UBC, almost all of my courses were in one building called Henry Angus. Yeah. Okay. And so for me, it felt like being in high school for another 3 years after I graduated and spent a year in like Gen Pop at UBC. So yeah, I absolutely relate to that and do remember very clearly my high school experience and how formative it was in actually what I do today as a career.
Yeah. And those impressionable years, whether it's first time jobs or it's the experiences and the lessons we learn in high school, they stay with us. And that's what top grading says. They stay with us throughout our entire career. But after interviewing hundreds and hundreds of candidates, I believe that those formative years impact us for the rest of our lives.
So from there, you ended up writing a book.
Yes,
which I was going to talk about later, but let's talk about that now because we sort of need to talk about the book before we talk about the board game. So let's talk about the book. So why the book?
Well, I had a spiritual experience. I was on Gambier Island and I was deciding between to stay in recruitment or to go for another job. And I decided I was walking with my dog Rox on Gambier, and I just had this voice ask me, "What makes you dance?"
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, one day it was so profound and it was like somebody was talking to me, but no one was there, that I decided that one day I would write a book. And so I sat down and just started. Blank piece of paper, just started. And I was told through an online course, don't edit, just write. And that's what I did. It took me about 2 years. And then that's where the board game was born.
So there's probably listeners who are sitting back thinking like, I've got a book. I know I've got a book inside me, but I don't know about writing a book. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that yet. So, maybe walk us through what it was like to actually make that decision to go and start that process. Because as you say, like you just started writing, right? So
yes, yeah.
was there this like pivotal, like you described the moment you decided to start, but when you actually sat down that first day, yeah, like what was that like?
It's really scary.
Yeah.
And daunting. I would set a time 3 or 4 times a day, 3 or 4 times a week to write.
Yeah.
And I'd light a couple of candles and just get my mind into that zone.
Yeah.
And then I would just trust that the right words would land on paper. But I was always surprised what did land on paper.
Okay.
And the objective was to count my words so I could just make sure that I was always in forward motion. And it didn't matter if one day it was 500 and the next day it was 2,000. It didn't matter as long as I was moving forward.
I have a lot of friends who are authors, and I've spoken to them at length about this process of writing a book, about just deciding to sit down and write. And many of them have said, I just have a goal to write like a page, or I have a goal to write a certain number of words. And then as soon as I reach that, it doesn't matter if it's complete garbage, I've written that many words, and then I stop that day. And they just kind of rinse and repeat that habit. What they've reflected back to me is that they started off with a vision for what they were about to write, but then the writing itself informed them of what the book was actually supposed to be. And I'm curious what your experience was from when you sat down, because 2 years is a long time. Like, obviously you changed over the 2 years, right? As a human being, you grew and changed and evolved. Mm-hmm. So therefore your writing, I'm assuming, may have grown and changed and evolved as well. What was that process like from when you started the book until what you thought the book was about versus when you put the pen down, you're like, I think I might be done. Tell us about that.
Writing a book is one of the most transformative or transformational experiences of my life, partly because I didn't know what was going to land. And I didn't realize I needed to forgive my dad. It's a crazy thing.
Wow.
And my dad has been gone for a long time. But I didn't realize that. I didn't realize a lot of things. It just sort of came out from me and then onto paper.
And what did you think the book was, though? Like at the beginning when you sat down,
at the beginning, what did I think?
What did you think it was for?
Well, I thought that it would be more like a memoir and the challenges of raising 4 daughters. And it is challenging. I got through the teenage years. I'm like, oh, great, done. And then I didn't see the 20s coming. Raising 4 daughters has been my greatest accomplishment, but also my greatest challenge.
Yeah.
And so I lost myself in motherhood. I became consumed and sort of lost myself in that. And so I knew it was going to be about that, but I didn't really know. It really was a process of trusting that whatever, like you said about your friends, whatever landed on paper was supposed to land on paper. I thought I would write about my girls, but I didn't end up. I ended up writing I wrote a little bit about them. It was more of a self-help book to help moms live their best life and to moms that may have been stuck like I was, to help them through that.
So it started off potentially as a memoir, and that as you went through the next 2 years, all of a sudden it was almost a self-help book for you who've already lived the experience, and then becomes a self-help book for other moms who you can share your story with of raising 4 daughters and what it means to get lost in motherhood. And then I'm assuming on the other side of that, rediscover who you truly are.
Yes. And in every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
So I take people through adversity and the difficult challenges of that, and how adversity can actually shine a light on your life. And when you can get to the other side of adversity, it is also transformative. But you've got to go through the hard stuff to get to the other side.
So then walk us through then how you finish the book, you get it out there into the world, and somehow from that, a board game starts to come into your mind.
My book isn't quite out yet because I want to launch my book and my game at the same time.
Oh, okay. All right.
They're close cousins. So,
okay.
So I had a dream when I was a young kid, Mike, that I would write a book. And then I also, in my high school, Laura Robinson, who created Balderdash, she went to my high school. And so when she did Balderdash, I thought, and she was 2 years ahead of me, I said, one day I'm going to do a board game. So it just sort of happened. So I hadn't finished. I'd only written my first manuscripts, like the first, and then I sent that into the editor.
Yeah.
And so I had 2 weeks to just sort of, it seemed like spare time. So
why don't I do a board game?
Yeah, I know. So I did.
Yeah.
On the way to the coffee shop one day, I said to Bob, okay, if I'm just sitting there, I'm just watching people, I just know that I'm thinking about a board game. So I literally went to the dollar store.
Yeah.
And I just got a board.
Yeah.
And sticky notes and just started doing it. But what I realized, without writing my book, I would never have created the board game because they were closely connected.
Got it. And so when you had those 2 weeks and you had this time and the board game started to come to mind, there was a purpose behind it. Like what did you, there's a vacuum in the world that occurred for this board game. Like, I know who you are in the world. And for you to put your heart and energy into something, there must have been a vacuum in the world that you saw, that you realized this doesn't exist. It needs to exist. Even though I just spent the last 2 years of my life dedicating to getting this book out, I'm going to start building this next thing. And I want to put this out into the world. So what was the hole you wanted to fill in the universe with this board game?
When I look around the world and I see people standing at a bus stop in a line, every single person has their head on their phone. Or if I see parents and their children and they're both on separate screens, not talking to one another, it makes me feel sad. Yeah. And so everybody really is alone together. And so I thought, oh my goodness, we have to get talking again. The world needs us. And especially because the world is, there's so much uncertainty in the world. And the only thing we have is one another. And it's through open conversation and meaningful conversation, not like small talk, just that meaningful conversation. And I've sat with generations, so my mom and then my granddaughter, like 4 generations of playing the game, and for generations to share their stories, it's incredible to watch.
And so when you realize you go from Unravel You, which is the book, if we haven't even said the title of the book yet. So the book is called Unravel You. It will be available soon. And then you move from that to Now You're Talking. So tell us about the title. Why Now You're Talking is the title?
It was a title that we say in our everyday life.
Yeah.
And so I wanted something that people could relate to. But it's Now You're Talking, connect the dots with conversation. And again, it goes back to top grading. Top grading is all about connecting the dots. Who is this candidate? Who were they when they were a kid, when they were playing sports or whatever in high school? And who are they now? And what are the dots? We all have dots to connect.
Walk us through what the gameplay is like. So what's my experience? So I buy the game, I have it, I've got my family or my friends around, maybe multi-generations, as you say, you've tried it with successfully. What is the experience of actually playing the game?
It's people laugh. People are surprised what comes out. People have fun. And people think about it the next day. So that's what I have really found, that I will talk to people 2 days later or 3 later or whatever, and people are still thinking about what somebody said in a positive way. It's just like the conversation just opens, and people who you think you didn't really know, not to the same level. And it's not like they're scared. Here, let me just ask you one.
Okay, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, let's play the game, because I was just reflecting. It's funny, right before we do that, I was just reflecting on the fact that as a family, we've had these wonderful nights with super close friends after dinner, usually up in Whistler, BC, that's the ski resort, where we have sat down and played something like conversation cards. But what I always find is that, so you pull a card, everybody answers the thing, and then you go around. Eventually it kind of fizzles out. You've done some cards and you're done. So when I saw your board game, I'm like, okay, now the thing can keep going. Like, you can actually build off of it. That's why I was so excited to have this conversation with you, because I love that first approach of conversation cards, but I've seen it fizzle out. And turning it into a game means that it's actually got a destination and a journey that you can actually follow to keep the momentum going of these deep and rich conversations. So I'm just going to park that. Let's do one. Let's do a question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just answer why it's a board game?
Yeah, please.
Because in the dollar store version that adapted over like 2 or 3 times,
yeah,
I would play with friends and family and colleagues. Yeah. And I realized it must surround myself with type A personalities, because everybody wanted to win. They go, well, the conversation is the winning. Oh, they want to win. So that's why we created a board game.
What's so great is that I'm reflecting on doing leadership development, and whenever there's teams working on projects, they start getting competitive with each other, when was never the intent of the exercise or whatever it is we're doing. Like, no, we're just splitting up into smaller groups because it's easier to do the thing we just asked you to do. But they're like, if we finish quickly? I'm like, no, that's not a race.
I know.
You're right. But I think it's like we're all hardwired for that kind of competitiveness, whether people are type A or not. So, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's dive in. Ask the question. Okay. Let's do this. Yeah.
All right, Mike. What would your younger self be most surprised about your life today?
Wow. I think my younger self, I've been so intentional about the choices that I've made in life. My dad taught me goal planning when I was about 13, and I started really getting clear on the things I wanted in life. Then I learned about core values, and I started to plan my goals underneath each of my core values, so that I knew if I did the thing that it would lead to me expressing my core value, or sometimes multiple core values could be attached to the same goal. I think my younger self would look at it and go, oh, I did it. Like I did it. I did the things I set out to do. I think not in a linear fashion, in that it what I ended up doing, I would not have known. It is pretty close to what I thought I was going to do, tangentially, but not exactly the same. I thought I was going to be a psychologist. I run a leadership development firm, so there's a lot of psychology in that.
Yeah, yes.
So I think my younger self would be happy to see that being very purposeful and disciplined towards choosing the life that I wanted to live and setting clear boundaries along the way actually worked out.
Okay. Now, I'd be interested, how do you describe core values in your, Yeah,
I think a core values is like, there's this like overall moral compass, right? That we have as human beings. If we were all out killing each other every day, the species wouldn't last very long. It wouldn't be great, right? So there's certain things that are in all religions or all sort of moral codes, whatever they happen to be, that we can all sort of agree are probably a good idea that we all do. I think core values are a step beyond that, where we can all agree in our humanness. There's some good things about we should do as being a good human, but there are things that are important to me. So I know for me, a core value is wellness. Like wellness and health is really important, because I know if I take care of myself, then I will do a better job on my next core value, which is relationship. Yeah. And so relationships are really important to me. And so I put a lot of time and energy. Health and wellness comes first, relationships come second. Freedom matters to me a lot. The ability to choose the life that I want to live, to choose how I spend my time. My third one is abundance, that I have a thought process of abundance, and that I think about the world in the most abundant and graceful way possible, and that I operate within that framework. And then my fifth core value is growth, which is constant learning and growth, which is always looking to see what's next and how I can continue to grow, whether it's reading Stoicism daily or it's learning new sports. It's all sorts of things. I'm constantly trying to learn how to do the next thing. It could be something to do with business, how to be a better dad, how to be a better husband. Like I'm always reading and learning those things. And so I think of core values as those things that I value in the world. And for most people, there's 3 to 5 things that matter so much to them that they would want their life to work out as an expression of those values. And for anybody listening to this who's like, well, I don't really know what my core values are. You can we actually have a downloadable form on our website. If you go to our website, which is, it'll be in the show notes, but it's virtusinc.com, virtusinc.com. It'll pop up on the front page. There's a downloadable core values worksheet, and people can actually go through an experience. It's very short. I think it's like 4 pages of distilling down what their core values are, so that they get clear on what those 3 to 5 core values are. And then also measuring how their life is relative to those values. Are they truly living those values right now? And then if they're not, then being very specific about the actions they want to take to bring those values more to life.
Okay. So if you were to take this question, what would your younger self be most surprised about your life today? What core value would you place that card under? What core value does this card or this question represent in your answer?
I think it would probably fit, honestly, it would fit all of them. Because as I say, I've been very intentional. I've known these core values for at least the last longer than that, probably the last 28, no, probably about the last 30 years, I've been clear on that, around that time frame. Because I figured it out when I was around 27. I'm 53, so whatever that math is. So it's been a minute that I've known this, and I think that all of those values are the life I live right now. I think that my younger self would have been, the goals I set would have been more material in nature. And as I discovered core values, they became less material in nature and more focused on the life that I wanted to live. And so it's hard for me. I would place the values under that card. I wouldn't place the card in one of those values, because all 5 of my values are expressed in the answer I just gave you.
Okay. Well, now you're talking. We have people choose 5 values, but they never have the same. They never have the same deck twice, because we split them in half, and then they choose the 5 values that speak to them at the moment, and then put the card that their answer represents underneath the values. So I got to
pick one. Okay, if I had to pick one, no, I'm wrecking the game. If I can, no, I'll do it. Let me play the game properly. Okay, if I had to pick one, I would say it is freedom. Yeah, I would put it under freedom.
Yeah, and growth too. I mean, but yes, what you said, but I see that there's overlap. What or who would play you in a movie about your life?
Who would play me? Oh, it's got to be, okay, let me think about it. It's got to be somebody. Well, if I could pick, it would be Richard Gere and Owen Wilson's love child.
Perfect.
Like, I don't know, a combination of those two gentlemen for very, very different reasons would be.
Why? What are the reasons?
I always found, like, Richard Gere, I loved the calmness within which he shows up in the world, at least in the way that he acts, has a wonderful smile and a great way of showing up in the world, and just engenders trust very quickly.
Yes.
At least is the roles that I've seen him play. And Owen Wilson just has this wonderful joie de vivre, and a great sense of humor. And I think that if I had somebody that was able to express those two things, that I would be honored to have them play me in a movie.
Okay, and I know you might resist me on this, but which value would you put that under?
No, I won't resist you. I would put that under relationship.
Okay, good. One more question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do we have time?
This is fun. I love this stuff.
What is the most courageous thing that you have done in your life?
I think retrospectively, I would say quitting my job when I was 28 to do a startup. When I had been at a set of companies for 10 years, I was the president of the second largest division. On paper, quitting my job made no sense to anybody externally, unless you knew me really, really closely. But that leap of faith to, end a 10-year career to get into the business that is now, 25 years later, it was a definite leap of faith, but it was a belief in myself. And it was a belief actually grounded in core values, ironically, that I knew that the career path I'd already burnt out on a business trip to La Jolla, California, a year and a half before I resigned. And I knew that I wasn't on the right path, and I didn't know what the right path was. And I sat down and I wrote a list. It was supposed to be a top 10 list, but it had 15 things my life was going to have in it. Those 15 things were really mostly not material. They were really about a life well lived. And I discovered core values around that same time. And those two things together are what helped me chart the path to to actually leave the company that I was with to go and do a startup.
That must have been hard. Being really goal oriented, who you were, that must have been difficult because you changed paths then.
Well,
didn't you?
I did. Yet the reality, I was a leader all the way through, from a young age. I had leadership roles of all different descriptions. So going into a company that was doing leadership development wasn't that much of a stretch, even though I didn't really have a background in it from a learning perspective, right? It was all self-taught for the most part, or through my own life experience. And I was still quite young. I think the challenge for me was that at 18, the goals that I set for when I was 30 were, again, very material in nature. And so by the time I was 26 and a half, almost 27, I'd reached all the goals I wanted to hit by the time I was 30, but my life wasn't manageable. So I was in this weird cognitive dissonance place of getting everything that I want, and yet the life that I live was not healthy for me. And so I needed to do something different, and I didn't know what different was. So I needed some filtering mechanism. And when I came up with the list of 15 things, that's how I filtered the opportunities that came forward. But the last thing I thought I was going to do was to jump into a startup that wasn't on the radar at all. And yet it was the thing that seemed the most consistent with the values-based life I wanted to live. And I made myself a promise that I was going to go work on building a great business and creating a great life, but that the great life had to come first, and that I needed to take care of myself first before I took care of the business first. Because I did that, and and I burnt out.
Boy. And one more question. This isn't in the game, but who was a big influence in your life at that stage? And again, in the impressionable years, it's just built such a foundation for who we are.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I mean, my dad was a mentor to me. He's been deceased for quite a long time. It's been about 20 years now. He was a wonderful mentor to me, and he helped me with some pretty key decisions about what I wanted to do with my career and my life. I was also lucky to have a wonderful mentor and my first boss out of university, Jeff Owen, who worked very closely with me and was helping to sort of guide my career along as I reported to him. And then I had friends of my father's as well that were, foundational mentors for me. One of whom actually ended up doing this business with. I originally had three other partners, so I feel very lucky that I had great mentorship along the way, so that I wasn't just making these decisions on my own, but I had people that I could go to that I trusted to ask their advice and get them to share their experiences and their stories. And I still have great mentors today that are there for me, who I see regularly and chat with. And then now, I fast forward to today. I remember the first time that somebody referred to me as their mentor when they introduced me to someone. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know that I was that to a person. And then it's happened, more and more times as time has gone on. And at first I felt very reluctant in that role. And then I decided to embrace it. And I recognized that I'm of the age when I met many of my mentors who are influencing me. And I just forgot, I guess I felt so young. I feel so young still that I forgot that those people were my age for me when I was the age of the people that consider themselves mentees to me. So it's been a full circle of having them help me with the decision, and then leading to me now being that role.
Oh, sorry. These mentors contributed to who you are as a leader.
Foundationally, I look at them as not as people that are perfect, but I look to them as people like my father, for instance, another gentleman by the name of Walt Sutton, and another gentleman, Guff Munch, in particular, who I look at how they show up in the world. And I think to myself, if I'm so lucky and I work really hard, then maybe I can show up in the world the way these men have shown up in the world. And I feel that they have been North Stars and guiding stars for not just how I show up as a leader, but how I show up as a man, and what my character is. And I've learned an incredible amount, and they have been incredibly giving to me, helping me to become who I am today.
They were a gift, and now you're gifting other people with your knowledge and your wisdom.
So I'm super. So we've done some questions. So where are we on the board? Walk me through. These are wonderful questions, and I really appreciate the inquisitive nature that you genuinely have, but also that comes from the game itself. So we ask the questions. We put them under the values. How else does the game unfold?
So the game, it is just the conversation, and it is when there's to get 3 or 4 generations around a table, which doesn't usually happen, and have meaningful conversation. It is just incredibly memorable. I remember one of my daughters said to my mom, "Gigi, I didn't know about that." They just don't talk about things, and there's lighthearted questions too. It's not all deep, but just to hear things that you would never really encounter in a regular conversation, even with friends. You just learn new things. So you have to experience it, Mike, to really know what it's like. And I do have a prototype that I can, because we're still at the prototype stage, but we're going to market, or we're going to manufacturing at this point. This game has taken about 2 years. There has been overlap.
Right.
With the book in terms of but I connected with a nice young guy with Fiverr, and Upwork. He's now with Upwork out of Pakistan. And he and I have been now working together on this for 2.5 years.
Wow.
Just again, overlap. So these things don't just happen overnight. And Laura, she is serendipitously my game coach.
This is the founder of Balderdash.
Yes.
Good coach to have.
Yes, a very good coach to have. So serendipitously, we've reconnected, and so we're running at this together. Yeah, she's taught me a lot, and so I've got it right beside me here.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. For those of you who are on YouTube, you can see it. For those of you who aren't, it's now you're talking, connect the dots with conversation. There's 4 people sitting around the table playing the game in a beautiful box. And you know what's coming up for me as I see that image is I'm just thinking about how valuable this would be for a leadership team if they're going away on a retreat. Because I was having this conversation with a client this morning that she was asking about building trust. And I'm like, we don't build trust at the level of our roles in an organization. Mm-hmm. We build trust at the level of our humanness. And the more that we get to understand who we are as human beings, the deeper the roots go, the thicker the concrete foundation is of trust that we build on a team. Mm-hmm. And when you have conversations like the one that we just had and the ones that are in the game, you build connective tissue, deep roots, concrete foundation, whatever the analogy you like best is, that really transcends what your working world is. And it makes it so much easier to collaborate. It makes it so much easier to be in ideological conflict with people. Which helps you to build a better business at a better company and have stronger teams that collaborate better when you can stay away from the interpersonal conflict and you can be deep into that ideological conflict.
Yes, because you understand people at a level that's deeper. And so there's a way of understanding and getting rid of judgment. Right. And that's valuable. I'll just tell you, it's really interesting to watch parents with their children.
Okay.
And what I'm realizing is a lot of parents want to rescue their kids. So
while they're playing the game.
Yes. So
what does that look like?
So parents want to sort of answer for the kids. So many times I'm saying, okay, just let your kids, and at different ages, it's really, it's so fascinating. And when parents can sit back, and often it's a challenge, but when they can sit back and just be comfortable in the silence as their kids figure out what to say, kids come out with the most profound things, way more profound than what their parents were trying to sort of muster.
When they try to answer for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. When they try to answer for them. Yeah. It's almost magical.
I'm really curious, because I bet you there's some people that are listening to this right now, particularly if there's leaders listening to this, or as you said earlier, type A personalities. How do you win? How do you win the game? Yeah, how do you win the game?
Well, there is a finish. You start and then you finish, and then you can ask anybody, and as many questions as you want, and you don't have to answer any.
But, and then how do you win? So like, are you in teams, or are you individually playing?
Individually playing.
And how do you navigate through the board to get to the end of the board? Like, how do you complete the game in a way where you could say, like, do you win? Can you win the game? Or
there's a start and a finish.
Okay.
There's a start and a finish.
Okay. And is there a way that you can navigate? Like, how do you navigate the board in a way where, if you're competitive, do you really need to lean in more, or what is it that gets you to be successful in the game?
Well, successful, if you're not sharing and you just want to give a surface answer, that's fine. But then you get the more card, and people can throw down the more card because they want you to share more.
That's so great.
And I've had people triple more, because like 3 players are giving this one person, one of the players 3 more, like each a more cards. So that's one thing. So in the game, you go down with adversity and up with growth and change.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's life. It's life. Oh, there's adversity, there's unexpected, but keep going. But we need one another. And we need to have conversation in order to help ourselves through it. Together, we're stronger than we are individually.
Absolutely. I love that there's adversity and then there's growth in the same, because it's life, right? As you say, right? That is our lives, right? We're navigating that. I also love that there's more cards, because one of the things that we teach leaders how to do is when somebody provides an answer, a non-answer, or like a surface level answer, as you would say, sometimes they use words like interesting, which is doesn't mean anything. It's a filler word, right? And so if somebody says to me, oh, I found that really interesting, I'm like, oh, could you say more about that? And then they give the real answer after. And then you can just keep saying, oh, I'd love to hear more about that. And they keep going. And so eventually you kind of guide them to the place of the root of the thing that matters the most, as opposed to that original surface answer. So we teach leaders how to do that. And I love that you have cards you can throw down onto the board to just keep the conversation going at a level that's got depth to it.
Yes, it's a safe place and it's fun. And it's like, just let the conversations begin.
And what is your hope? So I'd love to know what your hope is. So, let's say it's your 90-year-old self is coming back to today and letting you know how it all worked out with the game. Mm-hmm. What are you hoping your 90-year-old self is sharing with you about how it actually all worked out?
I want people to share their light with one another. We all have such wisdom within us, no matter what the age. And yet we're forgetting that, or we're lost in our screens and in all the noise. So I'm hoping, and my hope is that we can reconnect again, and we can continue to reconnect. Reconnection, families will become stronger. Communities will become stronger. Businesses will become stronger, and relationships will become stronger. My granddaughter was playing with 16-year-old granddaughter playing with one of our daughters, and because I've come from a blended family, and teenagers can be tough. Mm-hmm. But when the question card came out, who do you admire most in your life? She said her mom, and gave all the reasons. So all the time that we had seen teenage behavior in that moment melted away, and they will both remember that forever. So that's what I want. More of that. More of what matters.
I believe as human beings, we're wired for connectedness and to be connected to each other. And I love that the purpose of your game is to build connection and to allow us to see the light in each other. What a beautiful purpose. And I will do everything I can outside of this podcast to help to spread the word. Adrienne, thank you so much for making time to have this conversation today. I've really appreciated hearing about your story, the book, the game, and it means a lot to me.
Oh, well, thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me. And I thank you for so openly sharing your story. And this is just the beginning. I hope to be able to ask you more questions.